Oh, you're saying for
What's up, stream? Go fuck yourselves. Just kidding. Love every one of you because no one's actually here. So we're just going to jump into the podcast. All right, you ready?
I mean, technically people are kind of here just in the future.
Right.
Because they'll be on YouTube and then someone will
Some
watch
weird
the
comment
YouTube.
will be posted.
Yeah. Either some very strange, deranged person or a bot will see it and make a comment.
It's all right. All right, you ready?
Ready.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And I guess I'll just say Happy Labor Day.
Yeah, you could just say that. That'd be easier.
But welcome back to another episode of Just Browsing. We have Zach on as a guest today, and we're going to be discussing movie trilogies.
See.
That there are some that we have on our list of our best movie franchise bracket, but for the majority, these are all the ones that were left off. So these will be the ones that we discuss today.
Yeah, I was going to say, so as we go through here, and the list that I sent you that I kind of came up with, because basically what I did was go through and first of all, I looked up like best movie trilogies, and you can look at a whole bunch of different articles, and people kind of have, for the most part, the same list. But if you just look up like movie trilogies, period, like I just wanted like an exhaustive list of like, show me movie trilogies, you know what I mean? Series that have exactly 3 movies in them. That was a bigger list because I was like, I kept seeing the same 10 or 12 trilogies pop up, and I know there's more trilogies than this that I'm not thinking of, but I need to see the list. So I eventually just got to a list of like, okay, here are movie trilogies, literally in like alphabetical order.
Right.
And I think, like you said, I tried to do a pretty good job of not including anything that we had on our movie franchise bracket on this list, which I think I did.
I think I only see one.
What we're doing with this list right here is, you know, if anyone who's listening listened to our, our movie franchise bracket, we had 64 different movie franchises, and all of those were at least 4 movies and up. So we wanted to differentiate between movie trilogies, which can be considered movie franchises, but to me, like a franchise is something that has more than 3 movies.
Right. It's just it's a longer story.
Yeah. Because we have a lot of franchises out there that have, you know, anywhere from 4 to 9 to 11 movies. You know, like there's, to me, that's like a full blown franchise.
Right.
So because there was a lot of movies that we wanted to include that were just trilogies, and I think when we first started putting our lists together, we kind of had to make that distinction because the list could have been much longer. I don't know how many I have on here, but it's like at least 20.
It's at least 20 or 25.
I would say, you know, just as right off the top, this is definitely not an exhaustive list of all movie trilogies, but I wanted to include probably the most famous, well-known ones and ones that most people have seen. Some of these I have not seen. I think most of them I've seen, if not all of them, I've seen at least one. And then there's a few on here that I have not seen, but I felt were like notable enough to be included, even though I haven't seen them. Lots of other people have probably seen them, so they're worth including on like the, you know, movie trilogy discussion.
I think I've seen a lot of these, but there might be a couple on here that are like I've seen 1 or 2 of the movies and not the third.
Right. So, and we're not putting these in a bracket or anything, and we're not really ranking them. I think at the end I'll probably go over which ones are my
like
favorite.
A top 3 or top 5.
Yeah, but I think it'd just be fun to kind of go through this list and discuss them because there really are, you know, like I was just saying, there are a ton of
like
really
a lot of
great,
these would have made it far in my bracket.
Yeah, exactly. Bracket. So if we had made that distinction of, that's what I was just about to say, if we had made that distinction of we're going to include movie franchises that have, you know, 3 movies, trilogies would be included on that bracket, and that bracket would have probably looked a lot different. But we wanted to make that distinction to where it had to have more than 3, whereas this list is literally just speaking trilogies.
Right.
Now, I think, you know, the one that you probably noticed right off the bat, which I felt like we needed to include in this discussion as well, is the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, which for the sake of our movie bracket discussion for the franchise, we looped those into one or grouped them into one because together they would have 6 movies. Because it is kind of the same story, even though they were released as 2 separate trilogies. You know what I mean? So
I think you can make a distinction with them as, they happen in the same like universe and everything, but at the end of the day, the Hobbit is its own book, its own story, you know, of a different time. Lord of the Rings comes after that, and there's like a little bit of similarity in terms of the story, but really the only thing in there is the ring. If the ring doesn't appear in The Hobbit, you can't really make a direct connection between those two and, you know, the actual Lord of the Rings besides Gandalf and Bilbo knowing
I was going to say, the Bagginses.
Other than that, and maybe knowing, like, Lord Elrond, you can't really connect the two with, like, Frodo and Sam and their journey that they go on. There's no, like, direct...
I think those two are the only one, at least just off the top of my head on this list, that can kind of walk that fine line between being included in a movie trilogy discussion and being included in a movie franchise discussion. We were talking about franchises that have, you know, 4 or more movies, because,
I mean,
like I said, together there's 6, so that qualifies for the movie franchises, but separately they were made as 2 separate trilogies. So really you say, you know, like you could say The Lord of the Rings is one of your favorite trilogies of all time, but maybe you don't like the Hobbit trilogy as much. But they are 2 separate trilogies.
Right. I mean, the only other one
have separate discussions about.
Right, and the only other one on this list that you could maybe say deserves to be in like a franchise list would be The Dark Knight, just being in the realm of Batman. But there's just so many different Batmans and different actors and stuff like that. That The Dark Knight was a true trilogy in the terms of the same actors, same director, you know, same storyline. So you could couple that into you know, franchise, but it's more in a DC franchise in terms of it's just because you could do that with Spider-Man too.
Well, I was going to say. So I think you raised an important point. That was like one other disclaimer that I wanted to talk about before we really dive into the discussion and go down the list. Is like. So there was a few things that I kind of had to think about when I was compiling this list, because what I really wanted to do was just keep it at a relatively clean list of like, okay, this is a bona fide movie trilogy. It can't be connected to a larger franchise. Now, there are a couple that you could make the argument they're connected to a larger franchise. Like you said, the Dark Knight trilogy, even though Christopher Nolan made it as its own individual trilogy, had a beginning, middle, and end, you could technically loop that in with the overall Batman/DC universe extended universe, which would make it a franchise. I really consider it a movie trilogy because it's Christian Bale playing Batman. It's got its own contained story. It doesn't really connect to any of the outside Batman movies. And then, like you said, we have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy in here, which you could make the argument, well, if you take the other 2 Amazing Spider-Mans and then the 2 new Spider-Mans with Tom Holland in the MCU, that's a movie franchise. But, like, not really. I mean,
they also came out in different times. Like, The Dark Knight, I don't think there's any, like, it's not a DC Studios.
Right.
You know, it's like a legit, like, side project that Christopher Nolan got probably the rights to direct Batman. And same with Spider-Man. Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man, and that wasn't part of the Marvel universe necessarily in terms of when it was released, the storylines.
When those came out, there was no intention of making that part of a larger universe. It was like, we're going to make Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 and be done with it. That's it. So I think those are the little disclaimers that I wanted to make. I think most of the other trilogies on this list, you couldn't really make that distinction. I mean, they're all pretty much just movie trilogies on their own. They got a beginning, middle, and end.
They're all, some of them are just like, you should have just made one and moved on.
And one other thing I wanted to say too before we dive into the list, you know what I found rather frustrating actually is going through and finding there's a lot of franchises that could have been included on this discussion as being like an all-time movie trilogy, and they just kept making more movies. You know what I mean? Like, the first 3 are amazing, and then they decided to make a 4th one. And now there's 4.
And then there's
the first 3 are great, and the 4th one sucks. Or whatever. Or maybe they made 5 and then 6, and you're like, guys, if you would have just stopped, it would have been an awesome trilogy.
See, and there's perfect
But sometimes
ones
they can't resist, like, just that cash grab of like, well, the last one made $1 billion, so let's make another one. Like,
Fast and Furious. They just can't ever fucking relax. So, like, we got Fast 25 in the makes.
And I'm sorry, I keep saying one more thing. One more disclaimer.
Say another disclaimer. So that way you're not going to limit yourself.
Another disclaimer. Because I want to give some context to people who are listening to, like, well, why didn't you include such and such in this discussion? Why didn't you include such and such?
Oh, there's definitely going to be trilogies.
Yeah, like, this is not an exhaustive list. And one thing that I was also kind of debating on including, because if you go to Google right now and you just Google best movie trilogies, you know what pops up a lot is, like, original Star Wars trilogy, which, for the sake of our discussion, is not a trilogy. It's a movie franchise when you include the other 8 movies that they've now released or whatever.
And in all fairness, like Star Wars, yeah, it was released as a trilogy, but it was also released as episodes 4, 5, and 6. So even upon release of just 3 movies back in the 70s and early 80s, it was released saying, no, there will be more episodes.
Yeah.
I feel like George Lucas either didn't have the funding or he just was still developing the story until The Phantom Menace got released in, I think it was, 99 or something like that?
I think so, yeah.
So
it's kind of tough, like, if you Google best movie trilogies, shit like that will pop up. And then another thing that I was thinking was like, well, one could make the argument that, like, let's say Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, or Captain America, Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War is a trilogy. But it's not really fair. I think I was kind of discussing this a little bit, litigating it with Taya, and she's like, well, they're part of the overall MCU. So they don't, I mean, technically, yeah, Captain America has a trilogy, Iron Man has a trilogy, Thor has a trilogy, but, like, they're not made that way. Like, they're made as, like, because when you see Iron Man 3, after seeing Iron Man 2, you've seen Iron Man 3 with, like, several other movies in between Iron Man 2 and then Iron Man 3. Like, it's meant to come out not only as a sequel to Iron Man 2, but also as a sequel to everything else that came out in between, and it's supposed to connect all of the other MCU movies that are going to come out after Iron Man 3. So it's not like they set out to make, okay, we're going to make a contained Iron Man story with a beginning, middle, and end in Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, and then make all these other MCU movies. It just so happened that they were like, hey, Iron Man's connected to this universe. He's already had 2 movies, but we want to give him another movie to kind of connect in with the overall story.
I think the difference with all of those and, like, the Marvel ones is they're all taking place to set up for a bigger story. So it's part of a franchise because each of those movies has an important role in the outcome of later movies or other people's movies. So they all connect.
Yeah.
No matter how you think about it, they're all connected.
Yeah.
Whereas a trilogy should just be these 3 movies are connected without any
that's
outside.
It. You don't need anything. You don't need to watch anything else to understand what's happening. Yeah. I think it'd be hard to. You could make that argument, but it would also be. I think the counter argument is, well, you can't really consider yourself a movie trilogy if you're part of if you're one entry in a series of 25 movies. Like, you can't really do that. It's not really a trilogy at that point. It's just 3 self-contained movies within this larger narrative. So, anyway, like I said, I think I'm done with all of my disclaimers before we get started.
Anyways, one more thing.
But one more thing, really quick before we get started. I
don't know why you put the 3 best ones that I've seen on the top here.
I was going to say, well, okay, I think what I did is I started with the ones that I could come up with just off the top of my head, and then later down in the list, it was stuff that I had to look up going, okay, show me a list of just movie trilogies, and then we'll include them on there. So they're in no particular order. Do you want to just start at the top, and we'll just work our way through?
We can just start at the top.
So,
I mean, this is probably the best one on here.
Let's litigate it a little bit at the end, and I think let's save our discussion for these for a little bit later. But
we could save like a top 5 discussion. We can kind of go through the list.
I think we should do that. So, just starting off the list is what we were just discussing briefly is Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I think I'm going to save a lot of what I have to say about that for later in the discussion. But it's really a masterfully done trilogy. It's pretty amazing.
The only thing that I will complain about this trilogy is that Heath Ledger acted so well that he drove himself to an unfortunate mix of drugs and alcohol that ended up killing himself. That's the only thing I can complain about this. Is he got so embedded in his character in... why am I drawing a blank on the second one?
The Dark Knight?
Yeah, The Dark Knight. I was thinking The Dark Knight Rises, and I'm like, it's The Dark Knight.
Just subtract a word.
He got so embedded in the character, which made that movie, like, just over the top that he passed away, unfortunately, because he was mentally, like, in this Joker character. Mm-hmm. That's my only complaint about this.
Yeah. Real quick sidebar, because like I said, I want to save our discussion for this for later. I was at the gym the other day, and I got there and my headphones were dead. I got my Bluetooth headphones out, and they were dead. I was like, shit. Because I was just going to do some cardio, get on the bike,
whatever.
You pulled
out a portable speaker, and we're bumping shit around the gym.
Be that asshole, walk around with a JBL speaker. But at Vasa, because I go to Vasa, they have this entertainment room where they'll show movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay. I want to ride the bike, and I don't want to just sit here and not listen to music. So I'm going to go back there and watch. I was like, whatever movie they have on, I'll just suffer through it. If it's just some
20 minutes of
entertainment, while I do my cardio. So I get back there, and I look, and they have the schedule up on the wall, and I'm like, all right, which movie are they showing today? And I find the date, and it says The Dark Knight Rises, and I'm like, fuck yeah, dude.
I'm doing 3 hours of cardio.
I literally was only planning on doing a half hour. I was on the bike for a full hour, just fucking glued into The Dark Knight, because it kept being like, like you're certain of your favorite movies, you'll come in and you'll be like, oh shit, it's about to come up on this part, so you want to like watch until it gets to that part. And then in The Dark Knight, there's just so many of those where I'm like, oh, but I got to see him do this, and I got to see him fight Bane, and like all this shit. And I'm like, I just was sitting there for an hour, just glued in to fucking Dark Knight Rises. So anyway, it was a perfect, because I haven't actually seen those movies in a while. I've watched them like a million times, but it's probably been a couple years now.
I need to sit down and rewatch them.
Yeah, and like, I got so excited that one was on. I think the first one in that one is the weakest one in my opinion.
It's boring.
It's okay, but just compared to 2 and 3, it looks really bad in comparison. But yeah, anyway, Dark Knight. We'll save our discussion for that for later. That's just a pretty flawless movie trilogy. Next up is also another one that won literally like all the Oscars.
Right. Deservingly so.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy. And, to anyone who has seen it, you are fully aware of how amazing that trilogy of movies is. To anyone who hasn't seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it. Obviously, if you like fantasy stories and sort of medieval wartime type action and fighting and stuff like that, it's going to be way more up your alley than if you're not into those things. But I think, honestly, even if you're not super into the fantasy genre, you'll probably still enjoy The Lord of the Rings. It's just a really incredible story, and that trilogy is done so well that you'd be hard pressed to find someone who would watch those movies and not enjoy them. And they're long. I mean, it's a long experience,
and
it's worth it.
If they actually showed everything that like the books talked about, each movie would be like 6+ hours.
Yeah,
which I would be totally.
And they're
okay with.
Okay, so real quickly too, I had a coworker of mine recently who was telling me his girlfriend had never seen Lord of the Rings, and I used to talk movies and books and stuff with this guy all the time. Like he has a lot of similar interests as I do in terms of TV shows and movies. And he had obviously seen The Lord of the Rings. I've seen The Lord of the Rings a whole bunch. And he was like, I was going to show my girlfriend The Lord of the Rings movies, and I guess they accidentally clicked on like the uncut versions.
Oh, yeah.
The extended editions.
You're in for a long time.
And he told me, because he came in after the long weekend or whatever, and I was like, so did you guys watch them? What did you think? And he goes, dude, we accidentally clicked on the extended versions, and he's like, it almost ruined the experience. Because he's like, there's like these giant sections that are like really slow and like
you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, the hobbits will it'll just be like them singing some hymn for like a really long extended scene. You're kind of like, okay, like let's get on with it, But like that stuff was trimmed way down for like the theatrical cuts. And like you said, even the theatrical cuts are like 3 hours long. So I mean, and I think one of the things, I'm not positive this is what happened, but I've heard this before, so I'm pretty sure this is how they filmed them. But they filmed these all concurrently.
Right.
Like they got the actors, the crew, everyone together, and we're filming all three together. Like this is going to be made as a trilogy, which does not happen very often in Hollywood, where they set out and they're like, it's smart to do, especially a story like that involving such a large cast of characters. Imagine trying to get everyone back together again
a year or two
later to do number 2, and then doing the same thing for number 3. It's
well,
it just makes sense to bang out the whole thing.
With how long they are,
like,
filming it probably took a year, but then editing each one probably took a year or two.
Yeah, it probably took a long time.
Get everything in. So, I mean, they did it perfect. And not to mention, if you're like an actor playing an orc or like the Uruk-hai, like you don't want to go in and out of makeup because it takes 6-7 hours to get it ready for a 30-second scene. So you'd rather be like, okay, I got 15 30-second scenes. Right. Let's get them all done in one day.
Exactly. So I don't have to come back in tomorrow at 6 a.m. and endure 7 hours worth of makeup. All right, next up on the list is the Hobbit Trilogy. So again, Peter Jackson directed all 3 of these. I don't know if these were all 3 made at the same time, the same way the Lord of the Rings was.
I think they were.
They might have. It seems like it would make sense to do it that way. But this is obviously the prequel story to the Lord of the Rings books, and this one was a little bit different, because The Hobbit is just one book, whereas
They just split
the
it
Lord
into
of the
3
Rings
parts.
trilogy is actually 3 books to begin with. So they just took one book and split it into 3 this time instead of taking 3
But we're not here to
separate
talk
books.
about book trilogies. We're talking about movie
True,
trilogies.
true. I mean, I will just say this. A lot of people shit on the Hobbit movie trilogy, and it seemed to me like the main complaint was they just relied on way too much CGI.
We got used to Lord of the Rings being true, like the main orcs and the
Yeah.
Uruk-hai you see were actual human beings.
Yeah.
And a lot of it in the Hobbit was truly CGI. That it changes the
Yeah.
dynamic of at least the viewing.
Yeah.
Portion of it.
I think that took a lot of people out of it, and I remember those movies getting kind of shit on, and it seems like that's still the like, you know, presumptive narrative is everyone loves the Lord of the Rings trilogy and everyone shits on the Hobbit trilogy. Me personally,
I like both.
I think, I was going to ask you, do you like the Hobbit movies? I like
Hobbit.
them.
They're very entertaining.
I treat the Hobbit trilogy like the prequel Star Wars trilogy, where like a lot of people shit on those compared to the originals, and I'm like,
but it sets up a good.
Awesome.
It sets up part of the story.
Yeah, and I'm
a
like,
way.
are they the best story-wise? I'm talking about Star Wars prequels. Probably not, but are they entertaining as hell? Yes. And the Hobbit movies are the same way. I think the story, it's probably the opposite. The story is really good in the Hobbit movies. It's just everyone's complaint was like, oh, they use too much CGI, which, like, okay, I get. But, like, really, is that going to be the one reason you don't
But
like
then going back
this
to,
whole
like-
awesome trilogy that they
Right.
fleshed out?
But going back to like that argument, if you don't like too much CGI, you know, I'll use Star Wars as an example. The newest 3 Star Wars, their CGI, in my opinion, is the worst out of all of the 9
You said
movies.
that, and I don't see it that way.
Bro. The opening. Go back to like the opening scene with Rey when she slides down to save BB-8, and we got to wrap this up quick, or we're gonna be way off topic. But whoever's writing that, I don't know if it's a mechanical animal or whatever, but that CGI part right there, I'm like, dude, this looks so bad.
See,
Dude,
that's not CGI though. They're using like animatronics and stuff. Like that's an actual like thing they built.
It's
I
terrible.
Well, I think
I
what
count
they
it
were-
as CGI because it's, in my mind, part of their computer fucking aided shit, and it's just bad. It's just
All right,
bad.
You've mentioned that before, and I disagree.
I'm not a fan of it.
I disagree, but I don't know. Just go back to the Hobbit to change gears, because you literally have Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker paused in the corner over here, so it'd be
I'm almost
very
done.
easy for us to lose ourselves in a Star Wars discussion. I like the Hobbit movies, and I think the story is fucking awesome. Like, if you like fantasy stories, to get sucked into the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings story,
Good books.
it's really hard
movies.
not to just be like, okay, I guess I'm watching 9 hours worth of like Middle Earth storytelling right
Bro,
now.
I might watch that after I'm done with.
They're so
Star
great,
Wars.
dude. They're so great. Okay, next up on the list is the Blade Trilogy, and I think we actually
I've only seen like maybe one full movie, and
Okay.
I don't even remember it.
Okay.
So
That's what I was going to ask you, because this got brought up on our movie sword fighter discussion, because Blade was one of our sword
Blade.
fighters, and I was asking you, and
I don't know.
I have seen all 3, I think, but it's been a really long time. To be honest, like off the top of my head, the most I can recall about Blade right now is I think the 3rd one where Ryan Gosling is in it, or not Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds. Sorry,
Ryan Reynolds with
and then
Harrison Ford, right?
Harrison Ford. No,
Oh, no, that's
he's not
2049
in
or
Blade.
whatever.
Yeah. That's Blade Runner 2049. There's
That's why
there's
I
a really
got
famous
confused
actress
Blade,
too
you
in the
know.
3rd one. Is it like Jessica Alba or something?
Sure.
I don't know. But then and then Blade has like, there's like the old man. I think Chris Christopherson plays like his like, you know how a lot of times in action movies or whatever, or spy movies, they have like the guy at the computers or the equipment guy who like gets them
Nerd.
ready.
Yeah.
Chris Christopherson is like his guy. He's like this old kind of gray-haired, grizzled man or whatever. And like that's basically all I can really remember about those movies is that, and then just him running around like chopping vampires in half with swords and stuff. So like I don't remember anything about the plot really. I just remember that they're pretty
entertaining
entertaining.
action.
Yeah, they're all on HBO Max right now. I think I'm actually going to rewatch those sometime soon. I almost watched one last night actually. I was looking for a movie and almost started it. But yeah, Blade Trilogy, dope. Definitely worth mentioning. I think this next one on the list is probably considered by most like cinephiles and movie fans as like maybe the greatest trilogy ever made, and this is the Godfather Trilogy. Have you seen these?
Oh yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Big fan?
I love
Big
like
fan?
mobster type movies like this.
I think we had the argument you think Godfather's better than Goodfellas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm more partial to Goodfellas, but I think the Godfather movies are like masterfully done.
I think.
I mean, it's hard to not watch those movies and be like, that's a fucking masterpiece.
I mean, when you watch, and I looked at this because I do have Italian heritage and everything, and this kind of stuff is really like the mobster, mafia type movies are just. It's entertaining because a lot of them are true. Like what goes on in those movies, maybe not like historically accurate with names and exact actions, but like The Godfather, they had to get permission to shoot this from the mafia. They like legit said, the mafia goes, if you say any of these words, it can't be done. Like they legit, like there's articles out there that the directors legit asked, the bosses, hey, can we do this? And like, you can't say this word, you can't say this word, you can't say this word, you can't say this word. And before the movies were released, they got screened by the bosses and people in the mafia to make sure, because they were releasing The Godfather, which it comes out to be, they call it like a crime family, and they go, you can't say these words because you're releasing this, which is true, it's kind of based on a true story, and we can't have this perception of the public thinking that we're these bad criminals, when in reality they are.
Yeah. But
they're trying to it was like, I was really interested to read the article going, there was a lot more. I mean, they were shot back, in the early 80s, I think?
No, it was like 70s. I'm pretty sure the
70s.
first one came out in the early 70s, yeah.
And that was the life back then. Like, they were, maybe not as... I mean, they were well known. That was back when 60s and 70s is when that shit was like going down.
Yeah, very prevalent.
So
I think so. For the longest time, it's funny. I was telling my dad. So there's obviously this. I'm a giant movie fan, and there's like movies that I hear brought up over
Breaking
and
news.
over on
Zach
the internet.
Zach is a giant movie fan.
Yes, I hear movies brought up over and over again on the internet. Amongst like movie fan sites that people are constantly touting certain movies as like these amazing movies that everyone who likes movies needs to see. And there's some of them, there's like a handful that have slipped through the cracks and I've somehow just never seen. So I'm like kind of slowly but surely trying to go back and watch these movies that I've just for whatever reason missed that everyone says are amazing. And for the longest time, the Godfather Trilogy was on there. I had never seen it until like very recently, like past few years. And I was telling my dad, I was like, you know what? One of the most frustrating things about the rise of streaming services and the decline of like in-store video rental stores like Blockbuster and stuff is that if I want to watch the Godfather Trilogy and it's not on any of the streaming services, I'm kind of just fucked.
You got to go to Amazon and rent it.
You got to rent it somewhere through either iTunes or Amazon Prime or whatever. And I'm like, but if you don't want to do that, you want to just find it on a streaming service. It's kind of frustrating because if you have 5 streaming services and it's not on any of them, you're like, well, where can I watch this? I don't want to spend the money to rent it. I'm already paying for like fucking 5 or 6 streaming services. I just want to watch it. So I was telling him, I was like, it's kind of annoying that I can't just walk into, Blockbuster would have had the Godfather Trilogy. I could have just gone in and rented
all 3 movies.
And then spent a whole weekend and watched all of them. So one year for my birthday, he just bought me the Godfather Trilogy on Blu-ray. He's like, here you go. Just watch them. I was like, thank you. So I finally watched all 3 of them, and I think the general consensus is the first 2 are the best. I think everyone doesn't like the third one near as much. But what's amazing is like anyone who wants to research this can definitely find this out very easily. Those movies won so many Oscars and got nominated for so many Oscars. It's like not only are they telling this incredibly enthralling like crime organization mafia movie or story, but they also got like all of the famous, most best actors and actresses in the world to be in that movie, and like one of the greatest,
are already Italian too.
Yeah, one of the greatest film directors, Francis Ford Coppola, ever. And they just put on this masterclass of telling gangster storytelling in movie form. I mean, you like open up the Blu-ray package that my dad got me, and there's this whole like pamphlet, and it'll go through and it'll be like Godfather 1, Oscars nominated. It's like this giant list. And it'll be like Oscars 1, and it's this giant list. Right. Same thing for Godfather 2. Even Godfather 3, which everyone agrees is like the least successful of all of the trilogy, still got nominated for a shit ton of Oscars. It's basically like if you were one of the main or supporting actors or actresses in any of those movies, you probably got nominated for an Oscar.
Right.
You got like Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall. Like the list just goes on. James Caan is in that movie. Like, it's just like this, and then again, it's directed, so it gets
They just
nominated
don't
for
miss.
like
They don't miss.
best picture, best director, best screenplay, best actor, best supporting actor. It's like just remarkable. Those movies are incredible. Now, this is not a movie trilogy, but it goes in with the discussion of The Godfather. I enjoy watching Goodfellas more. Me personally, that's my favorite gangster movie ever.
You know what? I might rewatch this week. The Irishman.
Oh, dude.
I need to block out 10 hours.
You got to block out a whole fucking day. I almost watched that last night, too. I was like trying to pick a movie, and I scrolled past The Irishman. I was like, shit.
And then it was like 10 o'clock, and you're like, do I want to be up until
that's
6
exactly
a.m.?
what it was. I start doing the time thing, like, well, it is like a 3-hour-long movie.
Am I going to be up for 24 straight hours because I want to watch this?
I need to rewatch that because I've only seen it the one time, actually. Like, right when it was released, I watched it on Netflix.
Bro, that's one of those movies that, and we're way off track, but that's one of those movies that when I get into it, I'm like, I'm not moving. If I have to pee, I'm like, can I hold my pee till the very end? Because I don't want to pause because I just want the story to keep flowing.
That was actually one of those movies that I was very thankful that it was released on Netflix so you could like pause and get up because it's so long. And I have the world's smallest bladder, so I have to pee all the time. So I'm like, I'm so into this story, and I'm like,
3.5 hour long movie.
Yeah, I think it is. And I'm like, shit, I gotta pee, but this is so good. I'm like, all right, pause, and then run up and go to the bathroom and come back. So it's like if you were watching that in a movie theater, you'd have to like sprint out of the theater and then come back. So it's just nice to have that.
You're like, what did I miss? And like, absolutely nothing. And you're like, oh.
It's nice to have that type of movie available on streaming to where you can just pause it whenever you need to. But yeah, I need to give that a rewatch because I've only watched it the one time when it came out. But all right, back to our list. Next up is the Back to the Future franchise. Have you ever seen those movies?
I've seen 2 of them. I might have seen all 3, but like I know I've seen the first one.
Yeah.
And I've seen one where he's got like a hoverboard. I don't know if that's 2 or 3.
I do remember that.
But like, I think my dad likes the first one, but then we'd watch them if they were on TV, but I wouldn't really pay attention. So I like the first one, but I think it was one of those, they probably should have just stopped after 1.
Yeah.
This is one of those trilogies I think should have been Back to the Future.
This is actually one movie trilogy and one franchise that I have never actually seen from like start to finish. I think I'm kind of like you. They used to be shown on TV all the time. So I've seen like probably big chunks of all 3 of them just at separate points on TV, but I've never been like, okay, let's start at 1 and watch beginning to end, and start at 2 and watch beginning to end. So I need to probably sit down at some point and watch the Back to the Future movies because everyone's like, oh my God, you've never seen Back to the Future. They're so amazing. I don't, for whatever reason, it's never been something that's like really grabbed me where I've been like, I need to sit down and watch Back to the Future. You know what I mean? Whereas like Godfather, it was something that for the longest time I was like, I need to set out some time to watch Godfather. Back to the Future is just not one of those, but I hear really good things about it, so I need to give it a shot. It's
entertaining. It's just kind of weird.
Again, I said this at the top. Not all of these movie trilogies I have seen, and some of them I've only seen like one, but I felt like Back to the Future was such a well-known trilogy that it deserved being included on this list for this discussion, even though neither of us have really seen most of them. Okay, moving on. The Matrix Trilogy is up next. The Matrix Trilogy is one of my all-time favorite movie trilogies. Are you a Matrix guy?
I don't get into the Matrix.
No?
I've seen them all.
Yeah.
And like, I was kind of entertained. Like when I first watched them, I was like, oh, the Matrix, like Matrix Reloaded and everything. Yeah. And then I was just kind of like, Yeah. I feel like it could have been, like the idea, I think, and the concept of it were really cool. I just kind of feel like the execution of it was just kind of like a little like, I didn't really follow the execution part of the idea, which I didn't really get into that part of the sci-fi.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't have anything bad to say about them. I just didn't get into like I said, the idea was there. I just felt the execution was kind of like, ooh, you could have done this, and that would have been so much cooler.
So I've always been a giant fan of The Matrix, and I really like sci-fi stories. I think that's probably my favorite genre of fiction, probably followed by fantasy after that. But like, I just love science fiction stuff, and especially anything involving artificial intelligence is like, go ahead and hit me up with that shit. So I think as we brought this up and we were talking about it just now, I think my relationship with The Matrix has stayed just as strong my whole life, but it's changed, and the reasons why I like it have changed from when I first saw them when I was much younger to now. So, and the difference is when I saw them when I was younger, like if you see this as a young boy or a young man, what attracts you to these movies is the action, right? Like the action set pieces in these movies are incredible. Bunch of slow-mo gunfights and like cool kung fu moves and a whole sword battle.
It's one of those
sequence
movies that will
and,
be, you know,
car chase
remembered
scenes.
forever because of the slow-mo dodging the bullets. When you're a kid and you see that, you're
it's
like,
so cool.
Yeah, like, you know, you have your friend shoot you with a Nerf dart,
right,
and you're like, and it hits you, and you're like, damn, I can't be in the Matrix.
So I think when you first see it when you're a young person, that's what is appealing, and then you just love watching these awesome action set pieces. And then obviously, you know, like towards the third one where like Mr. Smith or Agent Smith and Neo are like basically, you know, superhero level people like fighting in this city and blowing up buildings and shit. You're like, this is awesome. I love this. But you're not really necessarily paying attention to like the philosophy of the idea behind that story.
Right.
Whereas like now that I've grown older, I still, just trust me, I still like the action. That's great. I'm here for the action. But you also stay for the story and the philosophy of like, okay, the idea behind this is we developed artificial intelligence at some point along the line in our history. It became so powerful and all-knowing, it basically wiped out most of human civilization and then took the remaining humans and basically enslaved them and used them as batteries. And now every human who is still alive, the world that they perceive is actually a simulation being injected into their minds, whereas they actually live in like a little tube in this dystopian fucking world.
Right.
So that idea is fascinating. And the idea of like what is real, what isn't, you know, are we living in a simulation? That kind of stuff, those discussions have been coming up a lot more prevalently here in the last few years. And I think that's what makes The Matrix, especially the first one,
Like it's a futuristic,
such an amazing sci-fi movie, because it came out in like, I think it came out in like 99 or something. Like it was like,
it wasn't
way ahead of its time, like way before a lot of people started really thinking about these AI and like simulation theory and all this kind of stuff. And like, I'm going to actually double check that, because I want to say the first Matrix did come out in the 90s, which is like mind-blowing when you think about the fact of like how
it's kind of like a Star Wars type thing. Like how does
how
someone
ahead of its
think
time
of this stuff?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like, it's genius basically.
I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings too. How does someone write all
I was
this?
right. So it was 99. And then they released Reloaded and Revolutions in the same year in 2003. And by the way, did you know they have Matrix 4 coming out this year?
I did.
How do you feel about that?
Man,
I'm fucking pumped. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm pumped.
John Wick enters.
That'd be fucking dope. Neo and John Wick in the same movie. All right, enough about The Matrix. We have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy.
It says Tony Maguire on here, actually.
Oh, it does? Oh, yeah. You didn't watch the Tony Maguire Spider-Man movies?
Those were the best. Tobey Maguire ones were bad. Tony Maguire on the
Tony
other hand,
Maguire.
no.
See, it's his lesser-known younger brother, his twin
he made
brother.
spoof Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
They were they're Spider-Mams.
Yeah. They're really good.
Dude, to be honest, these were my favorite Spider-Mans, because to me this was the introduction into Spider-Man, and I think, you know, for me, Spider-Man's supposed to be a superhero, which means he has some, you know, ability that a human doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And in that, he was bit by a genetically modified spider, which makes him a spider, more or less. Mm-hmm. You know, he can climb on buildings because he has, like, the hairs, like they show, like the little hairs come out.
Yeah.
That he can stick to buildings.
Yeah.
He can shoot webs out of his body. He doesn't have a device anywhere. He just becomes beyond strong, you know. So he's a true superhero in these. Whereas, the Amazing Spider-Man, he develops the web shooter.
I think really the only difference is he has all the same abilities. He just develops the web shooter, whereas Tobey Maguire could actually like shoot them.
Right,
out of
he has as an ability.
And same thing with Tom Holland. Tom Holland, he can't shoot him out of his own body. He has to like have these little.
He has a full suit given to him
things,
by you know. So, but they're both extremely strong. They have an ability.
I think they still have like the Spidey sense. They're still super strong. They can still climb on the walls and all that kind of stuff. It's just that,
but they're not fully Spider-Man
right.
in terms of
they
can shoot their own web out that's coming from their arms. Because you know when those came out, you know how many times, and you and I are probably both extremely guilty of this. You would like be in the pool and you'd go. And then you would like jump in the corner, or you'd sit in the corner of the pool, and then you would, or you would run around your house like shooting webs. They were just iconic movies back then, and I think they're the best. I will say the Tom Holland ones will probably end up being the best overall, but the Tobey Maguire ones are the OG Spider-Man that everyone hates for some reason. But I love them. Those are great fucking movies.
I think a lot of people actually really like those ones, and I think people get kind of nostalgic for them. I would say the Spider-Man movies that are like the lowest on everyone's list are the Andrew Garfield ones, the Amazing Spider-Man ones. And they're okay, but I think if they're just kind of sandwiched between much better movies. Like the Tobey Maguire trilogy is really good, and then the Tom Holland new Spider-Man movies are really good because they're a part of the MCU. And those Amazing Spider-Mans just kind of look really bad in comparison, even though I think Andrew Garfield made a good Spider-Man. I will say I want to rewatch the Tobey Maguire trilogy sometime soon before like the newest Spider-Man, the new Tom Holland one comes out. I've seen bits and pieces the other day. I was watching it. We stayed in a hotel after this wedding, and the end of 2 and the beginning of 3 was on like Stars or something,
right.
And I was watching it, and I'm like, "Fuck, man!"
So
it was Doc Ock. You know, like this. I think the second one of that trilogy might be my favorite. Was Doc Ock? He's one of the best villains ever.
You've seen the new spoiler, right? For the new
trailer
with Doc Ock coming up, and he goes, "Hello, Peter."
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I've looked into all this stuff because everyone's right. It's just fun. So let's just do a quick little.
Okay. I would say spoiler alert for anyone who's listening who has not seen the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer. Fast forward 2 minutes.
Yeah, but it's just a trailer. I don't know anything that's going to happen.
Right.
But Doc Ock comes back.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They show the thermal.
That grenade thing from the Green Goblin. And you hear him laughing.
Right. So you can't necessarily assume he's back, but at the same time, that would just be such a fucking tease if they didn't bring him back. And then there was I can't really. I don't think the Sandman. What's his name?
I think he's just Sandman. I don't know what his character's
show
name is,
something in the trailer of him coming back as well.
Right. And there's also like electricity and stuff to where they might have that Electro guy from the Amazing Spider-Mans. That's everyone's one of the theories going around.
So they connect all the villains coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in true sense, you could technically have all 3 of these Spider-Man characters come in because Tobey Maguire is like he's genetically modified.
Mm-hmm.
Garfield isn't working with Tony Stark.
Mm-hmm.
He made his shit himself.
Yep.
And then you have Tom Holland working with Tony Stark in the Avengers. So they're all different. They all have different stories, but they're somehow all named Peter Parker, right? I mean, we get it. It's Star Wars. Spider-Man, so they have to be named Peter Parker.
Yeah.
What if they do bring in Garfield and Tobey Maguire?
Well, I think that is the plan. I mean, I don't know if it's like official, but the fact that the guy who played Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2 in Tobey Maguire's trilogy is like literally confirmed to be in the new movie. And they have all these teases to the villains from that trilogy and possibly villains from the Amazing Spider-Man movies. If they don't bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, it's going to be the biggest tease ever. I think everyone's pretty much anticipating them showing up. And the way, I think what gets everyone so excited, and look, I mean, I'm wearing a fucking Marvel shirt. I'm not a comics fan, but like this shit gets me very excited. I love talking about this stuff. So like,
I know we're going to have to get back on track. Or we're going to be.
I think the way they're doing it is through this like multiverse idea. And there's been, throughout, so the Disney Plus shows have come out throughout this year. You had WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, then Loki. And then we've had Black Widow and now Shang-Chi. And then we're going to have Eternals and then Spider-Man. So there's like lots of Marvel this year.
And Black Panther's, is it coming out this year?
I think that's next year, I think, yeah. But there's like lots of Marvel, and there's more shows that are supposedly coming out throughout the end of the year on Disney Plus.
Right.
So what I was going to say is there's been multiple events throughout shows and movies where you've been like, okay, everyone's anticipating this multiverse coming into play. How is that going to happen exactly? And the end of Loki, I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, is a big indicator of the multiverse. And then this tease for Spider-Man No Way Home in the new trailer with Doctor Strange trying to perform this spell to take away everyone's memory of Peter Parker being Spider-Man is like breaking the multiverse. And this is how you're able to cross trilogies and cross movies and have 3 different Spider-Mans and have all of their various villains all together and having to have this big ultimate showdown. So I think it's like a whole new, like once you thought, okay, Marvel is... After Thanos and the Infinity Saga, they're out of ideas. They're not out of fucking ideas.
No, they're just getting started.
This multiversal idea all it did was open up a gigantic amount of different avenues they can go down. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't even know when we're going to get the end of the MCU for good. They might just keep making, like, you and I might die and there won't be any more. Like, they'll still be making MCU movies.
They just won't have Stan Lee cameos in them.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of directions they can go. Anyway, like you said, looping
back to the list, we have Austin Powers. I like the Austin Powers movies. I grew up, watching those. Those were kind of our comedy movies growing up. So I liked them. I thought they were funny. They don't really bring any value into besides I want to laugh for an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's why you watch Austin Powers. Yeah. They're funny. There's really no true storyline behind all of them besides a British spy that I've seen them that so you have British Spy 007 and I'm like, okay, Austin Powers is just. He's just a comedy. It's just comedy, and people don't get it. I love them. I think they're fun to watch.
I think they're hilarious. But Taya does not like them. I think there's certain people.
Most women don't like comedy, though.
Well,
they like romantic comedy.
And I think a lot of women don't have as much of a capacity for slapstick comedy as guys do.
Stupidity,
guys
do.
Guys think stupid humor is a lot funnier than girls do. I think on average, at least in my experience. So that's why I don't know a lot of women who like Austin Powers. Most guys I know are Austin Powers is fucking hilarious. I think they're hilarious.
They're hilarious.
I think they're slapsticky and stupid, but in the perfect way.
Right.
They're just stupid enough to where it's still hilarious, but not so stupid that you're this is dumb. Turn this off. You know what I mean?
I love them. They're entertaining.
Yeah, I think they're hilarious. So
the next one I've never even heard of. So. If you haven't watched them,
I haven't seen this one either. I'll just mention it. It's the Before trilogy, so it's an Ethan Hawke led.
I haven't even heard of them.
They're romantic movies, but apparently they're really, really good. They're directed by Richard Linklater, and it's before midnight, before sunrise, and before sunset. I don't know which order they go in, but they're amazing apparently, and they've been made 20 or so years apart. I don't know. Everyone talks about them being amazing.
I don't think I'll ever watch them unless I'm forced to.
I felt like they should be included on the list just because a lot of hardcore movie people say they're amazing. I have never seen them, so we can move on. Bad Boys is next on the list.
Bad Boys for me is one of those trilogies that should have just ended after one.
I think they should have. I think you could have kept two. I think two is still pretty solid. But three was not.
The newest one, no.
Three was not very good.
Three ruins two for me. It makes
Did you see the third one, by the way?
No.
It's not.
I mean,
worth
I've
watching.
seen parts of it, but I'm I'm just not one was funny, one was good, had action, comedy, and I'm this is a good movie. Just stop here. And Bad Boys 2, I was like you said, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But they probably could have done without 2 and 3, and Bad Boys would have just been a solid fucking movie.
Right. It's I think the first two are super entertaining, and it's funny watching those movies. You can there are certain directors that you can tell the movie is directed by that person right off the bat. And Michael Bay is one of those guys. If you turn on a Michael Bay movie, fucking immediately, this is a Michael Bay movie.
Like Transformers.
Yeah.
It's the 3 Transformers.
Yeah. It's a bunch of very attractive women wearing hardly any clothing, a bunch of really nice sports cars, lots of shooting. Yep. And then there's always the shots of the characters in a circle talking, but the camera is pointed up at them and it's going around in a circle and the sun is glinting off of them and stuff. Lots of that type of shit. And also he has a very if you've ever seen, have you seen Pearl Harbor and 13 Hours? Have you seen both of those? This is where you answer.
Are you asking me if I've seen Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, I'm just double checking to see if you've seen
I own both of them.
Okay, good.
I've watched them both 300 times. Pearl Harbor was actually going to be watched today.
So both Michael Bay movies, if you notice something similar in those movies and in the Transformers movies, all of his explosions look very similar. Have you noticed that? They're all
explosions look similar?
They're very fireworky, you know what I mean? They look kind of like fireworks a little bit.
And kind of going on what you probably already said, the main characters in there will stand with something going on in the background looking one direction.
Yes.
And it's always just after a battle scene or right before they go into battle.
Yep.
In 13 Hours, you get John Krasinski standing there looking a direction after the whole battle in Benghazi and everything, just smoke going everywhere, and you just look exhausted, and you're that's a true warrior.
There's always they got cuts on their face and black soot,
but they're not moving, they're just staring off into the distance. And then in Pearl Harbor, you got before they board their planes to go off and bomb Tokyo, they're standing on the edge just looking off into an endless vast of the ocean, and you're this is about to go down. And then they get in a plane and you're we got to sit here and watch him fly for fucking hours. Great.
Well, it's funny, there's a lot of people who have made the joke like Michael Bay only makes movies for teenage boys, and it's like, yeah, well, I fucking love it. So, and I once was a teenage boy, and I still am at heart. So,
I love Pearl Harbor is one of my all-time favorite movies. Yeah. I'm only disappointed because the historical accuracy on it is very low.
I haven't seen that movie in a really long time. I don't remember.
I love that movie.
A ton of
Cuba
that movie.
Gooding Jr.'s in it.
Isn't that Ben Affleck? He's like one of the main stars.
Yeah. He's like the main character. Yeah. Jennifer Gardner.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember the girl that he falls in love with. I can't remember her name.
Okay.
But there's a lot of big names in it.
Isn't that one pretty long too?
Yeah, it's like a 3 hour plus.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
But I love it. But I just wish it was more historically accurate because I'm a huge World War II nut, and I just wish it was more historically accurate. All right, and anyways, ending that because we're gonna have half of this episode.
Just random.
We're not even halfway through this list, and we've already been live for fucking like 6 hours. So.
Oh, 6 hours. Wow. Time works really weird in your house.
does.
Next up on the list is the Chronicles of Riddick trilogy. You ever seen these?
This is with Vin Diesel. Mm-hmm. I've seen the first one.
Yeah.
I liked it, but I never got into it, so I didn't care to follow up.
Right. I think they're cool, and I think this one, this is one of those ones where I've seen a bunch of the first two on TV, but I've always
the new one just came out.
Yeah, the new one is actually very recent, within the last couple of years. I always come in at these random points, and I think in my head, the first two are commingled into one movie to me, and I get the story. I'm not really sure on the story because I've never started from the beginning and watched all the way through, but it's a cool idea, and I'm not really exactly sure what's going on with his character, if he's some sort of a mutant or an alien or something, because he seems to have some sort of extra sensory abilities and shit like that. I don't know. And then there's because Pitch Black is considered in this trilogy, right? Isn't that one? And
I
then
believe so.
They're on that planet, and then you have to get inside at sundown, or else these bat things come by and will just eat you in 4 seconds or something.
Right.
There's a lot of weird shit going on in those movies,
it's
but
definitely
they seem kind of cool. It's really hard sci-fi.
It's a hard sci-fi action, but I never really got into it, so I watched the first one. I was kind of
Yeah.
I
think it's a perfect Vin Diesel led franchise. I think Vin Diesel has made a really solid career out of making decent but widely entertaining action movies.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Where you're okay, I don't really want to pay to go see this movie in the theaters, but if it comes out on Redbox or it's on Netflix, I'll watch the shit out of it. You know, it's that's kind of how I feel about Vin Diesel's career. Next up is the Cloverfield trilogy.
I've only watched the one that was released when we were in middle school, where I got motion sickness because they're just running through New York City or wherever, and the camera's shaking. You never get an idea of what that actual fuck's going on. I sat there and I was like, some monsters at Godzilla's in New York, and then they're just and then he dies and the camera falls, and I'm like, I have no idea what just happened. I just ran through New York.
Right.
Though,
it's I think a lot of people had issues with the movie, especially the way it's shot. They just put the first one on HBO Max, actually. I just saw that last night. I told Taya, so I've seen all three now. She, like you, did not like the first one. And I really didn't like the first one either. I think I wanted it to be so good, and it was just a letdown. You know what I mean? I don't think you remember. Do you remember when this came out?
It was
how fucking excited everyone who was our age was
we
for
would
this movie.
pack
We were
theaters with
this is going to be the greatest movie ever. And then we all got out of it and we're oh. Well, that was kind of let down.
Bro, they released Cloverfield, I Am Legend, and then there was another one where a high school teacher has this huge crush on the girl. He escapes from prison, and, kills her entire family, all the police that are protecting her.
Damn,
Prom night.
Oh, I don't think I saw Prom Night.
Prom Night. I went and watched. We went and watched all those in the theaters with all of our middle school friends. Prom Night was
Was it a big fucking deal?
Shit, yeah, dude. Because all the girls were freaking out because, let's be real, us guys don't have to. I mean, we can say we have to worry about stuff like that because some do, but in reality, women, that shit could truly happen.
Yeah.
Now, him escaping from prison and killing all these people through a ceiling, that won't happen because our prisons are a lot more, secure than loose tiles on the ceiling. Let's be real. But it was girls were leaving, I'm fucking scared, and I'm like, The dude got what he deserved.
Yeah, I've never seen that one, but there were a handful of movies that I remember being a big fucking deal. Like Project X was a big deal when it came out.
Fucking
like I remember just movie, like sold out showings at AMC and like just
of all like
shit ton of high
14-year-olds.
schoolers. Yeah, just middle schoolers and high schoolers.
Everyone with their flip phones out, and then you get the worker come in and they'd like turn the lights on and pause the movie. Like if you don't put your phone away, we'll stop watching. We're like, boo.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So Cloverfield was one of those movies. I've seen all three. The first one, I wanted it. It had so much potential. It did not capitalize on that potential. The second one, I think, is my favorite. It's a damn good movie.
Is that Cloverfield Lane?
It's 10 Cloverfield Lane, yeah. And it's really, I think what makes it so good is its only connection to the Cloverfield universe comes at the very, very end, like the last 5 minutes. The rest of the movie could exist separately as just a really good psychological thriller. It's fucking really good. And then the third one was the Cloverfield Paradox, which came out like right after the Super Bowl a couple years ago. They just dropped it on Netflix with like no warning. And it's okay. It's really busy. There's a lot going on. It has to do with them being up in space, and they're working on a particle collider or something, and then they somehow like break dimensions and all this weird shit starts happening. Yeah, there's a lot going on. I like the Cloverfield universe just because of like the mythology around it, and like they do such a good job of like all this like viral marketing for all the movies when they come out and stuff like that. The second one I would say is hands down the best if you want to watch one of them. 10 Cloverfield Lane.
I'm not watching the first one again.
Well,
no shot in hell.
The good thing about the second two is they're shot like normal movies. They're not the handheld camera type, the found footage is what they call it or whatever. So, next up is Divergent. You seen the Divergent movies?
I've seen all of them.
I have too, actually. I think I've seen all of them.
The only thing I'll say against them, I mean, they're entertaining, but to me, they're kind of like a knockoff Hunger Games.
That's exactly how I feel.
They're a more in the world of the Divergent, or like the Divergent world. They're like a stricter Hunger Games. Like each, you get sorted into a different, area, or you can kind of choose your own pathway.
Yeah.
But each specific area, you got like the smart people, you got the farmers, you got like the free roaming, like the runners or whatever. Like, it just kind of seems like a knockoff Hunger Games to me. They were entertaining, but I didn't think they were anything that was like over the top. Like, well, this was great. It was just like, this is a knockoff Hunger Games in my opinion. Without the you all come together to fight and then you win and it's entertainment. It's just, you're all controlled in groups and told what to do.
That's exactly how I thought of it. And I think the only reason that it bothered me because it's fine that it's a knockoff Hunger Games. I mean, there's a lot of young adult fantasy sci-fi stories that follow very similar tropes to that sort of storytelling.
Like the next one on the list.
Right. But I think what I liked about Hunger Games so much more than Divergent is like, while Hunger Games is made as a young adult story, it still gets pretty dark and intense.
Yeah, I mean, I think people overthrowing a government.
Yeah, I think that's what you need to get not only like middle school age, high school aged boys and girls involved, but also adults to get interested in your story. Like, there needs to be some real stakes. Like, it needs to be cut down, dial back on the cheesy factor and dial up the real world factor. And I think Hunger Games found the perfect combination of those two things to get like a wide audience.
I mean, like Hunger Games, it's you have a bunch of oppressed people that just turn and overthrow a government that is the rich, like are ruling and using these people as pawns to watch kids kill each other as entertainment. So
it's pretty dark.
The Hunger Games has a better storyline, and
I think it
gets you more involved than Divergent. Divergent's kind of like there's a loose storyline.
Yeah, and Divergent almost just seemed like the G-rated version of that story. You know what I mean? It just
and then
like
the PG-13 is Maze Runner, which is next
totally
on the
agreed.
list.
Totally
because,
agreed.
Again, it's one of those where a bunch of kids are brought into a maze and, told to figure life out. And it's just one of those, it's like, is there any meaning behind putting them here? Like, you have this government or whatever that the kids break out of the maze, they get to the end of it, and then they're like, oh, we got to go hunt them down, and then they find more people. Like, it's just one of those, like, what's going on? All I know is there's a bigger power that are using these people as pawns and more or less entertainment.
I thoroughly enjoyed the Maze Runner movie. Have you seen all of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I think, if I was going to rank them, it'd be like Hunger Games, Maze Runner, Divergent.
Yeah,
in that
that's
order.
what I would do.
I think Maze Runner was really cool because, like you said, it had a really cool story behind it, whereas, like, the first one is the perfect introduction to that world where you have the whole mystery of, like, how did these people get here? Why can they not remember anything before this? What's up with this maze? Like, what's in this maze? What's on the outside of this maze? And then at the very end of the first one, leading into the second one, you get introduced to this wider world. And you're like, oh, shit, okay, here's some other stuff that's going on. I just think the storyline is a lot more captivating in that story than it is in, like, Divergent. I still think The Hunger Games is probably, out of those three, the best and and most well-made.
And most well-recognized.
Yeah, but Maze Runner is definitely cool. I liked them. Another trilogy that's on this list is The Expendables. Have you seen all three Expendables movies?
Talk about getting just the biggest big action star actors together to make movies. They're entertaining, but they add zero value to everyday life. They're just entertainment.
I have seen all three of these, and I think they're planning on making a fourth one, by the way.
I think it's already being, like, shot.
Yeah. There are certain movies that get released where immediately upon seeing the trailers or whatever, you're like, that movie's not going to be very good, but damn it, I'm going to watch it. Like, it's going to be super entertaining. Like, The Meg was one of those where I was like, I know that's not going to be
super cheesy,
winning any Oscars, but I am definitely watching it because it looks really entertaining. The Expendables movies are just, they fit that description perfectly.
Just a bunch of big action,
and
strong
thank God for Sylvester Stallone for being like, you know what? Movie audiences know me as this recognizable action hero. I'm just going to get every other major famous action hero from action movies for the last 30, 40 years.
And put them all
in the same movie, and we're just going to do nothing but murdering tons of nameless bad guys.
Yeah, we're going to act like this massive, important team when all we do is kill people.
It's going to be great. And, like, you don't really need to know the plot. You're just there to watch them indiscriminately massacre hundreds of nameless bad guys and save the day. It's great.
They're entertaining.
They're fucking awesome. Next up on this list is a movie trilogy which I think is not very good, but which I was forced to watch, is the 50 Shades.
Luckily for me, I was
trilogy.
only forced to watch the first one.
Yeah, they're not great.
They're stupid.
The storyline's really bad. They're not very well done.
That's all we have to say.
I honestly don't know, because obviously Taya was the one who forced me into watching these after I kind of forced her to watch all the Star Wars movies.
That's a non-fair trade-off.
Well, she had those included with like a bunch of, because we had to do.
No, I'm saying like 50 Shades should have counted for like Star Wars, Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings. Because it's painful. Seeing through the first one is painful.
They're not good. I think my biggest thing was like, I don't know why they were made as movies, is my thing. Like, that story, I think, great.
It's just like a hardcore, soft. It's like a soft, hardcore porno.
Yeah, it's like soft-core porn, but made as a movie to where wide audiences, like broader audiences, could watch it. Which is like,
it's where you could watch a woman's pain.
Why would you make that? You know what I mean? So to do the sex part of it to like the nth degree, it would have to be like a porno movie, basically.
Right.
But to make it just a movie to be released in theaters, you have to like give it a story and like, you know, G-rate a little bit the sex stuff, and it's just like, so you're getting this weird concoction of like not a good story and not good porn. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like,
it wasn't a good porno. And
why is this made? Why is this made? Like, that was my thing. Is like, they just should not have made these into movies. And I don't. God bless the main actor and actress who agreed to sign on to that, because I'm sure they got paid a shit ton of money to do those, but they're not good. They're just not good movies. And I don't know how you can, as an actor, give a good performance in a movie like that. They're just, I don't know, man. They're not good.
You talk about a weird way to I gotta go dry fuck someone for 4 hours today.
How awkward is that, dude?
Oh, the director's like, that wasn't good enough. Do it again. And you're like, this is just weird.
We need another take. Like, hey, man.
Like, this might go way too far, but I feel like at that point in time, if you're a director, you're like, you just go find an actor and actress who will consensualize in actually having sex, and you're like, you're just fucking. Like, you're legit just gonna fuck. Because
but see, you can't do that, because then it's just a porno, and you can't release that in theaters. That's what I'm saying, is like, that story.
Well, you can, you just can't show certain things.
Unadaptable. Like, I don't know why it was made into a movie. As a book, it's fine, because like, you can't, you know, whoever wants to buy the book is reading it and they're signing up for that experience or whatever. But like, to make it a movie, you have to like G-rate it down enough to where it can be released in theaters.
Like, oh yeah,
and by doing that, you're like G-rating the whole thing, which is like kind of why everyone got excited about it to begin with.
They G-rate a guy shoving a pool cue.
It's like, what are we doing?
You know, like,
it's so weird, dude. They're just not good. Weird. And just to go along with the fact that like, they're just not well made. You know what I mean? Like, the dialogue is cheesy, the storyline's not very good. They're just not very good movies. Anyway, that's my rant on 50 Shades.
Fuck 50 Shades.
The next Friday, and I think it's Friday after next, right? The Ice Cube led
I think
movies
should have just been a one and done.
The first one, okay, I will be honest, I don't think I've actually seen all of the sequels. I've seen like giant chunks of, I think, the second one.
I mean, the first one's iconic.
Is the second one next Friday? I think it is, right?
Yeah.
And then the third one is Friday after next. The first one I've seen all the way through a bunch of times, and it's hilarious.
We watched that in high school.
Yeah, all the fucking time. It's so funny. And then the second one, I've seen a bunch of it on TV, but it's also one of those movies where it's kind of better to watch it on your own, where you don't have like it being G-rated for TV, and they're like blanking out all these cuss words and stuff. It's not nearly as funny, but man, those movies are fucking funny.
They're funny. I just feel like you got to stop those after the first one. Like the first one's just an iconic, funny one.
Here's another thing. I think they are planning on making another one of these. So it's like
because Ice Cube's hurting for money.
Well, I think it's just because he knows a shit ton of people are going to watch him. And he's going to make.
Honestly,
why wouldn't you?
His next movie should be Jump Street 23.
Dude, oh my god, the Jump Street.
That would be. I would love to add that on here.
The next one on the list is the Hangover.
Again, another trilogy that should have just stopped after the first.
Agreed.
That first movie.
Iconic.
Is so fucking funny and so good. There's so many good one-liners in it. I mean, name a better story than The Hangover, and as far as being a guy going to a bachelor. Like, we went to your bachelor party in Vegas. Dude, like, we didn't even talk really hangover stuff, but we were all saying hangover lines. You know, we'd get ready to leave the room.
It's become
and
so
be like,
iconic.
Ready to let the dogs out?
Yeah,
and then I was like, what? And he's like, who let the dogs out? You know, you walk by Caesar's Palace and you're like, did the real Caesar live here? Like, it's just...
People just say that shit hilarious. Now. Like, there's so many fucking one-liners. And I think it's really been, like, one of the best R-rated comedies to come out for the last 20 years, probably. It's like top 5. Probably.
And then they're like, we're going to release 2, and you watch it, and you're like, it's kind of the same story, just in a different location.
2 is basically just, hey, let's do the exact same thing as the first one, just in a different location. And then 3 is like, what is going on
3 was just
here?
a bunch of random shit happening. Yeah. It was entertaining. You're like, this is kind of funny, but you're like, this. It was
honestly like more serious too. Remember, like there was like John Goodman played like this kind of scary gangster who like kills people, and you're like, I thought this was a comedy. You know, like it was very. It seemed like that third one didn't know what sort of a genre it wanted to pick. Didn't know like what kind of a movie it wanted to be. But you know, I think it's also can't be overstated enough. The genius of the first one of not showing the night before. You know what I mean? Where like they're like, hey, this whole movie is going to be about them the next day figuring out what they did the night before. You know, you're not going to see any of what they did the night before. And then at the very end,
they show what happened the night before, and you're like, you know, their same reaction when they look at the photos. They're like, oh!
Because that could be, it's a whole movie in and of itself is that night of them going through and doing all the crazy shit there, which, who knows, they might do one day. But anyway... Hangover, great. The trilogy as a whole, maybe not so great, but the first one's awesome.
I don't know. So the next one is Harold and Kumar. Yeah. I love, you know, the White Castle journey. That's just, it's fucking hilarious. Yeah. I like Escape from, you know, Gitmo. The Christmas one, I was kind of like, this is just kind of unnecessary. I think they kind of just did it to do it.
Yeah.
I like them though. I like the Harold and Kumars. They're really entertaining.
They're the perfect stoner comedy.
They've got like they're perfect stoner comedy. They got like edgy racism in there, especially in the second one when they
bunch of like homophobic type jokes or like gay jokes, racist jokes.
It's the comedy that I enjoy because it's comedy's supposed to be funny. There's supposed to be racist jokes. There's supposed to be
it's supposed to push the envelope a little bit.
Sexual jokes. There's supposed to be jokes that make people go like, you know, think about it, but then at the end of the day, they're not there being serious.
They're not serious.
It's supposed to make you laugh.
They're supposed to be what comedy's slightly inappropriate and make you be shocking and funny at the same time.
And they have like the perfect shit in there. Like it's just funny. I enjoy them. They're really stupid. There's no storylines in them. Besides, they want to go get White Castle when they're high, and then they have to escape from Guantanamo Bay and clear their names. And then the last one is Christmas. I don't even remember what happened in the Christmas one.
Me either. I do remember. This is shocking, by the way. I do remember seeing Harold and Kumar, the Christmas one, in 3D in the theater.
We were together.
Like, why were we watching that in the theaters in 3D?
I know exactly
who needs to see that movie in 3D, but we did it anyway. So anyway, Harold and Kumar,
another funny one,
funny ass trilogy. The Olympus Has Fallen trilogy,
just another one. I think the first movie was cool and everything, but then you just add it in. It's like, how many times can you let a president be this in danger?
It's kind of like the Taken problem. Like, hey man, how many times has your fucking daughter been taken? Like, calm down.
Speaking of Taken, we'll just bring that in because it is on the list. Taken, another great. The first one I loved. I actually loved the Taken trilogy just because I love Liam Neeson.
So I've actually never seen 2 and 3. I've heard they're not nearly as good.
No, the first one, you're like, okay, I get the story,
awesome,
like
dude.
that could actually happen,
Yeah.
Human trafficking and everything,
Yeah.
and then it just becomes, how many times is just this dude's family going to get taken, or how many times is this dude, it's one of those, like, I think that, they're entertaining, but you're kind of like, it's kind of the same story, and then you're just kind of like, how, like, this dude needs to get his fucking life together.
I think Taken, the original, and Olympus Has Fallen, the original, in those trilogies, two of the best action movies to come out in the last 20 years. Or
oh, yeah. Like, and they've got Gerard Butler, and then you got Liam Neeson, two of the best
just
action
so great
people.
And if I'm not mistaken, this was like the first, because Liam Neeson's been acting in movies for decades and has been a very well-respected, like Oscar-nominated actor for a long time. But I think Taken was really the first movie that kind of introduced him as like an action movie star to audiences, to where he's like, because he's kind of an older guy, even in when the first Taken comes out, which was like in 2008 or something. Right. And you really believe him as this like badass action movie star. You know what I mean? He's like an older Jason Bourne, basically. You know what I mean? And now it's like he does one of those movies a year, basically, where he's this like old grizzled, former badass who like has to
still just
come out of hiding to do some badass stuff.
He's like a retired John Wick.
Yeah, basically. And he's like just trying to mind his own business, and then something happens. He's like, all right, I got to be a badass again. How to Train Your Dragon. Have you ever seen any of these?
I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the other ones. I've heard they're all good though. So
they're all excellent.
But I haven't
they're
seen
really good.
The newer ones.
I had not seen these for the longest time, and we just recently watched these within the past few months. If you like animated movies at all, they're probably some of the best animated movies I've seen.
They're not
especially
Pixar. They're DreamWorks, right?
Yeah, they're not Pixar. That's what I was going to say. Is like outside of Pixar, which is where I go for animated movies more often than not. They're some of the best animated movies you're going to find for sure. They're really good. Okay, so we put Oceans on here, even though you could argue that this is a franchise, which I think, did we have this on our franchise?
Yeah, because they added the newest one in.
Okay.
I think we added the newest one.
This is one of those ones where I put it on here and we can litigate it if we want. I
haven't really seen I didn't really get too into these.
See,
casino heist movies. The first one I liked.
They're excellent. In terms of like heist movies, I think Oceans 11, 12, and 13 are some of the best heist movies ever made. Ocean's 8 I thought was actually really solid. Not nearly as good as the original, but I think this is one of those ones that popped up when you just Google trilogies, where like
because the first
they
one,
consider those first three its own
with
trilogy
George Clooney
kind of thing.
Is like the leading.
It's George Clooney, Brad Pitt. You got Don Cheadle, like just a
Matt
whole
Damon
cast.
in these two, or is it in the first one?
He is in these movies. Matt Damon, and then like Casey Affleck is in these movies. Like just a giant cast.
Right.
Bernie Mac, like shit ton of people.
I almost said, who's the guy that plays Bernie Mac in that?
Oh, you mean Bernie Mac?
Bernie Mac, right.
No, it's actually Robert Downey Jr. as Bernie Mac in those movies. Little known fact. Yeah, but the Oceans. So I guess this one's kind of a technicality. This one was included on our franchise bracket, but the Oceans movies
I'll add
are
another
really
technicality
good.
one at the end, but let's just finish this.
Next up is Pitch Perfect. I don't know if you've ever seen these.
I love the Pitch Perfect movies. I don't know what about it. I know what about it is, but I love the Pitch Perfects. I think
I've seen the first one, and then I've seen bits and pieces of the second one, or the second and third one, because Taya loves these movies. She'll be watching them every once in a while, and I'll see parts of them. The first one I think is good, and then she said the second one's okay, and then the third one's not very good.
The third one's the worst.
I've not seen any of the third one, I don't think, but I've seen parts of the second one.
I just like them because they've got like that. There's good, funny comedy, and it's just they're kind of like lighthearted movies. Like if you just want to have something going in the background, you can just kind of have it going on.
Did you know before those movies came out that there was like such a thing as a cappella singing competitions in colleges?
I didn't know about the competitions. I knew about like a cappella groups because of Pentatonics.
What's that?
Pentatonics, or I think it's Pentatonics. They are a group that sings. They have like a Hallelujah cover. They do a lot of Christmas stuff, like. And they're an a cappella group, and it's like really like it's different. It's like a different acoustic type version of songs. So I knew about like a cappella, and then Pitch Perfect came out. I'm like, oh, I kind of like the way a cappella sounds. Like it's just cool and different. So I got into Pitch Perfect and I liked it. And then when I was with Megan, we would watch that shit all the time. Like it'd always be on like Freeform.
The first one is funny enough that it keeps me interested, but I don't. Like nothing about acapella really gets me going. I don't know why. It's like it's fine, but I honestly like I was saying, like the most interesting part to me was like I didn't know this was a thing in colleges where like they had teams and like you could go compete in these like acapella competitions. I had no idea that was
because it's not a well-known thing. Like if you saw a flyer when you were down in school, you wouldn't have been like, I'm going to an acapella thing at the theater tonight. You're like, what is that?
Yeah, like I'm not even really sure what I'm getting
Like,
into.
I'd rather go watch a baseball game.
Exactly.
Than
Yeah. Like literally any other sport
contest.
than go to this. But yeah, good for those people who do that. And those movies are okay. The Da Vinci Code trilogy. So this would be Da Vinci Code. I think it's Angels and Demons, and then Inferno. I think was the third one. Have you seen all of them?
Yeah.
So Da Vinci Code is like a masterpiece.
Right.
That movie's amazing. I think Angels and Demons is not quite as good, but it's still really good. And then Inferno is not that good.
Right. Again, it's another one of those that I think they felt the need to like add on to the story.
Yeah.
Whereas like you could have just been like the Da Vinci Code, and you're like, fuck, this
Yeah.
is like a great
It's so
fucking
good.
movie.
Well, and I think what they did too is they're based on very, very, very popular books, and that guy had written more than one of those. So they're like, hey, not only was this first one, which was an adaptation of like a worldwide bestseller, super popular, and it got like nominated for Oscars and stuff, but now if we want to make more, this guy's written other books, so we can adapt number 2 and number 3 if we want, which they did, which I think they're fine. And I like Tom Hanks, pretty much any Tom Hanks movie I'm down for, but the first one is a masterpiece. Angels and Demons is, I think, still really good.
Just takes a step back.
But not quite as good. And then Inferno, you could just get that one altogether. I don't think it's really worth it. The next up is the Rush Hour trilogy.
Bro, so funny.
Which, honestly, I think is one of like the greatest trilogies ever made.
Those two together are just
None of them really
funny.
take a big step down in my eyes. Like
No,
I think they're
no,
all
no.
equally as entertaining. They're equally as hilarious, and they're just great. The buddy cop genre has been something that's been around for a really long time, and those are like some of the best buddy cop movies you can find.
Dude, the two, Jackie Chan and I can't remember why can't I think of his name?
It's Chris Tucker, right?
Chris Tucker, yeah.
Yeah.
They're just so funny together. Like, they just play their characters perfect. Like, everything just about those movies is great. I don't care really the content in terms of like the storylines, because there really are no storylines to develop throughout the movies. They're just funny. They're just entertaining. Like you can turn them on and like, I'm gonna laugh and I'm gonna enjoy everything.
Yeah, they're great. And like the whole idea behind a buddy cop story is to pit two guys who are complete opposites together and like force them to work together. And I mean, those two characters, you could not find two guys who are more opposite than those two guys.
Also, shout out to Jackie Chan for doing his own stunts.
For real. Jackie Chan is a national treasure. He's a worldwide treasure since that guy's international. But like, not only doing his own stunts, which is what he's known for, but also his comedic timing is really good in those movies. Like, that guy's just a super talented dude. So, yeah, shout out to the Rush Hour trilogy for being fucking awesome. Taken was the next one up. We just discussed that one quite a bit. Have you seen the Unbreakable trilogy? I don't know if that's like what it's called, but Unbreakable is the name of the first one. So this is the M. Night Shyamalan unofficial trilogy that no one really knew it was a trilogy until Split came out. But it's Unbreakable, Split, and then Glass. They're actually really good. I'm a big fan. I like M. Night Shyamalan's movies more often than not. Some of them don't exactly hit. A lot of the times they're really dependent on the twist, and is the twist effective, yada yada.
Right.
But this was really cool because I had seen Unbreakable a long time ago. Unbreakable. And then didn't really, I think it was like a little over my head. I saw it when I was too young. It was a little too like slow for me, but then as you watch it when you're older, you're like, oh, I see what he's going for here.
Kind of like every Pixar movie in the world, you watch again and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy.
And then Split came out, and I'm like, that looks awesome. I want to see that. And I'm a huge James McAvoy fan.
I was going to say, that's the one where he's
McAvoy.
got like 88,000 different personalities, right?
So I go and see that movie, and then at the very end, there's this like tease scene, like a Marvel movie almost, where Bruce Willis's character from Unbreakable comes in. You're like, oh shit, those two movies are linked. And then a couple years after Split came out, he makes Glass, which is like the last one where now all of them are in the same movie. And I think Glass didn't work for people as much as Split did, it seems like, but I thoroughly enjoyed all three of them.
Yeah.
And it's like the only one on here that was really not, they didn't set out to make a trilogy. It's not like,
it just kind of fell in place.
Yeah, it just kind of fell in place where he was like, okay, I have this idea for a story, and I could kind of connect it to this earlier movie I made, and then now I'll just do a third one and then make it its own trilogy. Whereas like a lot of these on this list were made specifically to be movie trilogies.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good one for people to check out if they've never seen that. And then the last one on the list, I just had Triple X, which is another Vin Diesel-led,
just an action,
action movie franchise, which
all right.
is not anything special. I never got super into the Triple X movies. I think I've seen the first one.
They're all right.
They're really like, it's like somehow a cross between like a James Bond and a Fast and Furious movie.
On motorcycles, usually.
Yeah. And it's just like, Vin Diesel has, like I said, made an entire career out of being like, oh, I'm Mr. fucking badass, like Mr. Like I can beat up anyone. I'm way smarter than anyone. kind of just over the top action hero where it's just like makes these super fantastical stories that are like really hard to believe. They're like not rooted in reality at all, but they make entertaining action movies. If you're going to the movies expecting to see action and entertainment, then most Vin Diesel movies will supply that. In fact, he just came out with a movie like last year, I think, called Bloodsport or Bloodshot. I think it's Bloodshot. That looked, again, super random, but like really entertaining. It's like some sort of a sci-fi action thing where he's almost killed and he's rebuilt using nanotechnology, and then somehow they're able to like control him, and they're like trying to make him go around and commit these crimes and stuff. I don't know. It seemed like interesting.
You'll give it a watch.
Yeah, I'll watch it at some point if it's on a streamer or whatever. But yeah, that was the list I kept. So that was the list I came up with.
I'm going to add to the list real quick, just because we brought in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, and this one, I wouldn't necessarily call a franchise. I think I discussed about it in the franchise bracket, but The Mummy. Because you got The Mummy Returns, and then The Mummy, the Dragon Emperor, and then you have The Mummy with
Tom Cruise.
Cruise. That I'm going to say the first trilogy just because it's an all-time fucking great.
Yeah. Because that was one it was on our movie franchise bracket.
Right, because they made The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and we just kind of agreed, even though the story, there's literally no correlation to The Mummy.
Yeah, great.
So
great.
Fucking good.
Number 3, not so much, but the first 2, excellent.
Yeah, the third one was just kind of random.
Yeah.
But the first 2...
So great.
So good, dude. Like, I could watch those on replay every day of my life.
They're like some of the most entertaining action-adventure movies ever made. They're so great.
Ever fucking made. Yeah. I love those. But I just had to bring that up because we did add,
Yeah. There was a couple in here, yeah.
I felt like I had to add it just because it is... Just the first 2 were like...
Yeah. So I think just glancing at this list, and obviously this is not going to be like my official top 5 or whatever, but I would say... These are my favorites. These are not the ones that I consider to be the best on this list, although there is some crossover. I think my favorite trilogies on this list would be The Dark Knight, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Matrix, Spider-Man.
That's 5. How many are you going to list out? 20?
And that's it, I think. That's all I want to list.
I would say mine are The Dark Knight, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Godfather, Spider-Man. That's it.
Yeah.
That'd be my 5 that I take off this list.
Which were yours again?
The Dark Knight, The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Godfather, and Spider-Man.
So we have largely the same list. I think I just didn't include The Godfather. I said The Matrix. Yeah. And like I said, I think The Godfather is probably, you could argue, the best trilogy on this whole list, but it's not one of my favorites per se. If I was just to grab a handful off of this list, it would be those. So Dark Knight, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, The Matrix, and Spider-Man. I think those are just like...
If I had to watch all of them...
If I'm going for pure entertainment, those are the trilogies I'm picking.
And if I'm going to have to watch all the movies, those are the ones I'm picking. If I can just pick which movie I want to watch, there might be some other in there. Like The Hangover would definitely jump in there. Harold and Kumar's, I might watch one just randomly because they're funny. But yeah, as far as the trilogies go, I'd stick with those 5 that I picked.
Yeah. And I think... I honestly might put The Dark Knight as like my favorite movie trilogy on this list.
It would be hard to argue against it.
Yeah. It's probably that or The Lord of the Rings, to be completely honest.
I mean, just in The Dark Knight, you like that movie alone
is so good.
Could arguably be the greatest movie ever released.
I think, and I've said this before when we were talking about our movie franchise bracket, The Dark Knight in that trilogy, that middle one, I think that one and Logan are 2 of the best superhero movies ever made. I don't think the superhero genre has gotten that good.
I mean,
since.
I just think overall The Dark Knight could be like one of the greatest movies ever released.
It's pretty perfect.
And I love The Dark Knight Rises, but that's kind of been stained for me because of what happened.
Oh, you mean the shooting?
With the shooting,
stuff, yeah.
I love that movie, but I was at a midnight premiere. And when we walked out, there were 50 cops everywhere at the theater. I wasn't, we were here at AMC, and what happened was out in Aurora, And for those of you that don't know, we're in the same state. That happened, a 20-minute drive from where we're at right now.
I actually wasn't there. Did I tell you I was in Cruces when that happened?
Yeah.
It was when I had just gone down to Cruces. That was when you were gone
football.
Yeah, I had to be down there during the summer, and it got released in the summer. So I saw it at a theater in Las Cruces, and then I woke up for weights the next morning early and saw
found
like
them.
news headlines about it, and I was like, what the fuck? Because like I knew a bunch of you guys here at home who had gone to midnight premieres, so I was like panicking, but then I found out it was in Aurora and like none
Right.
of you guys were there. But
Because when they first released it, just said shooting at
yeah,
you know
at a Colorado theater,
at a Colorado
or whatever.
theater during the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Well, so I know someone that was in a theater. He actually still has shrapnel in his body from being hit.
Yeah.
I talked with him about it. Really, really deep. He had a friend pass away, unfortunately, but like that just stained me. Like, you know, I was with Megan at the time, and we were in the front row behind the railing. So in my head, I play everything back, like when I watch the movie, of what would have happened if that was in the theater, and I'm like, I probably wouldn't be here if that was in our theater. So it's just one of those, like, it takes away from the movie every time I watch it, despite it still being good.
Yeah.
But the original Dark Knight, it's got to be the best movie.
Well, and I think, just speaking like movie-wise, it's... Some people had problems with the plot. I don't really know why. I mean, I think a lot of people just kind of like to pick apart movies. Even with a movie as good as The Dark Knight Rises, I think it's just a slight step down from The Dark Knight, because I really do think The Dark Knight is basically perfect.
Yeah, there's nothing
So
bad
it's
about
kind of hard if you're making a trilogy, if number 2 is that good, to then follow it up with a movie that's just as good or better. You know, I think it's still really good. I think if I was to rank them, it'd be like Dark Knight Rises, Batman Begins.
that would be me too.
But The Dark Knight Rises is still super entertaining.
but
Like I said the other night, I got stuck on doing cardio for an hour just watching that movie because I was totally sucked in. You know, I've seen that movie like a whole bunch of times, but
I think The Dark Knight Rises is a different, like, The Dark Knight, you go in and you're like, Batman's Batman. Like, no one can beat him. And physically, no one could beat him in that movie, but the Joker was such a mind game person that that's how he was.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't a physical specimen. He was a mind game. And then you go in the Dark Knight Rises, and you got Bane, who's a physical specimen.
yeah. And you're getting kind of like an older, retired Batman.
And then he breaks his back and gets, you know, like everything goes on. So it's more of like the comeback story of like Batman comes back to save everybody after Gotham's turned their back on him.
Yeah.
He's their last hero and everything.
Yeah.
And they're just really entertaining. I
Yeah.
fucking love them all.
And I think with that middle one, The Dark Knight, they literally with the Joker created one of if not the most iconic villain performance ever.
It was the greatest. It was probably the greatest performance in any movie ever.
Like
I'll hands down give it to Heath Ledger in that.
Incredible. It's incredible.
Like when you get so involved, like they said that he would keep himself in his room for like 10 days straight to get himself in this like mental mindset that literally ended up killing him. Like he literally killed himself to make that movie.
There's been a lot said about Heath Ledger's performance in that movie, just since, you know, obviously so much attention brought to it since he ended up committing suicide or whatever. But
it was an accidental overdose. He didn't commit suicide.
Okay.
He mixed prescription drugs to help with like the depression and everything that he went through with alcohol. And it was just an accidental overdose.
Yeah. Well, since that has happened, there's been all this attention brought to it, and all these, you know, actors who worked with him, his family, everyone's come out and made all these statements about like his process and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things that has been talked about since that movie came out is he was not a very popular choice for the Joker before that movie was released.
Right.
Like you know how for Batman movies are a big
It was
event
always the
deal.
Jack Nicholson.
It's always like
not Jack.
whoever they announce as Batman or whoever the villains are is like, it's always a big deal. You know, like if you get cast as Batman, this is a huge deal. So same thing was going for when they made Batman Begins. You already had established Christian Bale as the new Batman. They, you know, said they're going to make more movies or whatever. And then The Dark Knight, before it comes out, they announced they were casting Heath Ledger as Joker, and like people were not happy about it. Because he was like, prior to that, he had been in a lot of like kind of like romantic comedy type movies, and he was just known as this pretty boy type guy. And then that movie comes out, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" Like no one was expecting that from that guy.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
He sold himself on his.
Yeah, I think that's honestly I may be wrong, but that might be the first ever posthumous Oscar. Like he won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar posthumously for that movie.
Dude, he was such a good.
But anyway,
movie.
Yeah, I think the Dark Knight trilogy is probably my favorite on this list.
I would probably have to agree. I'd follow it by Lord of the Rings, though.
Yeah, I think you and I are in agreement with that, because it's like, I mean, dude, you settle in to watch those Lord of the Rings movies, and it's like, this is like some of the best storytelling ever.
Storytelling, there's action in all of them. Like, so good. So fucking good.
Anyway, that's our list. Again, as I said up top, that was not an exhaustive list.
If
of
it was
all
an
movie
exhaustive
trilogies.
list, we would be like a quarter of the way through it, probably.
Right,
and
right.
we would never get this podcast.
And
done.
trust me, I went through. So I found a Wikipedia that listed in alphabetical order of like the name of the movies or the name of the trilogy, all movie trilogies that have been released. Trust me, I included the ones that most people would have seen because there's a lot of trilogies out there. That you're like, what is this? No one's ever heard of this. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. You know how if you ever go to Redbox, there's like a whole bunch of just random garbage movies that you've never heard of. There's a lot of trilogies that are like that, where it's straight to DVD releases that no one's ever watched, and they made 3 of them.
Human Centipede, I'm pretty sure there's 3 of them or whatever, and it's just like the most fucked up movie ever that you're like, no wonder this was never released anywhere, but somehow you got funding for 3 of these.
Yeah, exactly. Where can you even watch those movies? I've never watched them, but like, where do you even find
some
Human
dark
Centipede?
website.
Like, it seems like not a movie that like
talk
anyone
about
would
the
want
most
to go out
fucked
and
up
watch.
idea ever, where you kidnap 3 people and then you connect them all by their asshole to the mouth, and like, dude, imagine being the person at the very back, like,
not great.
Like,
It's not.
I mean, like, it's one of those things you sit there and like, when I first heard of the idea, I'm like, how is someone going to connect 3 or 4 people from ass to mouth and make it like, like if the second person has to eat the first person's shit, that person's going to die from like, I don't know what poisoning
Sepsis,
it is, but
right?
yeah,
Isn't
you get sick and you'll die. Yeah. So like you have to connect the first person's digestive tract with the second person's digestive tract to where it's just like, it doesn't fucking make any sense how this surgically would happen.
Again, I've never seen those movies. I never will. But that, to me, when I hear the description of it, I'm like, that seems to me like some director or some writer had some weird fetish he wanted to explore and somehow got funding to make 3 movies. That's what that seems like to me.
I just want to know who funded him, because that's someone that's in there going, this is going to be successful.
Probably a lot of drugs were involved with those movies, I would imagine.
Yeah. Could you imagine being the actress like, this could be my big break? It's like, yeah, you're ass to mouth with someone. Yeah, that's your big break.
Yeah, who gets that script and is like, this is the one I want to do. This is where I'm going to win my Oscar. Anyway, we should end the podcast on a different subject other than the Human Centipede.
So, on a different subject, thanks for tuning in. It's football. We're finally back. We're going to be bringing you every week live updates of not the Fantasy League, because we're not doing that, because we learned our lesson last year.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
And we're probably going to just do an end-of-year one or maybe a middle-year one.
Yeah.
But everyone get excited. College football's already started. We got the pros starting this Thursday. Mm-hmm. And it's the first full week of full football season. So
it's Thursday's Buccaneers, and is it the Cowboys?
Buccaneers Cowboys is the NFL kickoff, and then
first regular
Sunday
season
will be the first full day of the season, followed by a Monday game.
Oh boy, dude, fantasy football's back. Are you ready for your life to get like 10% more stressful?
Bro, I've been monitoring like my lineup and everything. I haven't made a pickup yet.
I'm shocked. I got on there the other day and checked the activity. I'm like, Matt Shirley has made a bunch of waiver claims.
So I've been following all the injuries and everything, and I've had like, as soon as I get a notification of an injury, I'm on there like trying to find the next best player. And every player's already been taken, because we have such a large league that backups get taken right away because you got to. Yeah. And then all those backups have been taken. Fuck. I'm like waiting for that one person to be like, yeah, they're out for the season. I'm just going to slide in and be like.
I'm trying not to overmanage it. I checked both of my leagues. I had to do an auto draft to my work league, which I was not happy about. But I looked at my lineup. I'm like, okay, I can work with this. And in both leagues, I have 2 or 3 guys that are injured, but it doesn't seem serious. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to overmanage it. I'm just going to start the season, and then we'll see how everyone's performing, and I'll just kind of shuffle from there. And
the worst thing about multiple leagues is just I always try and draft the same players, because you'll draft players in one league, and then you'll play against those players in your other league. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I go, okay, my other league's just more for fun. Our league, like, as long as I'm not last, that's all I care about.
You always have one league that you care about a little bit more. Like my work league, there's 20 teams in my work league.
That's hard to care about.
As long as I don't play, as long as I'm middle of the pack, I'm happy. Like I don't care.
Our league, I wish that we all could like be a more fun type of group where like the loser gets a quarter-sized tattoo of the winner's choice on like their leg or their butt.
I would not get any tattoos. I would be down to do like some sort of like funny punishment or whatever, but like I'm not getting any fucking tattoos.
Or like a monetary, like every year we put $100 in and just we split it up.
I would do that.
1, 2, 3. Like it would just be fun. Like it's not like we're
would
robbing
make
our
people
friends. It would make
care a
people
lot
care.
more, yeah.
Like imagine being first place and you get $700.
Yeah, that's
second place you get 200.
some
First,
strong
third place you
motivation,
get your
yeah.
money back. Imagine like a league. Like
Yeah.
I wish. You would do it. Maybe Zach would do it, but I don't know if anyone else
Dean
in the
would do it.
league would be willing to like have fun like that. We
Yeah.
have the Sacco, which is in my cupboard because I think Brandon Stevens won it, but it's like, I wish we could just do that. Like it would just be fun. And yeah, maybe not do the tattoo, but maybe like they have to make their profile picture or something on a social media site like this,
right.
and like say some ridiculous shit.
Yeah.
Just to embarrass themselves because they sucked at fantasy football. Like, I just wish we would do that because at the end we're like, yeah, here's your Sacco, but at the end we're like, yeah, okay, big deal.
Right.
Like I'll put it in my cupboard.
Yeah. At least we do
So-
something though. Yeah, let's not make this another hour-long
Yeah,
podcast
you're right.
at the end of a movie trilogy podcast. So,
Well, if you've hung around this long, thanks.
yeah, thank you.
I don't know when we'll be back with another episode. Probably within a week. Well, maybe not this week, but
Yeah. We'll have to also decide what we're going to do for next time.
yeah. But we'll probably be back with another episode next week. Probably I would say probably a random topic so that we can like step away from a movie real quick and not do sports, I'd say we do a
Yeah.
random topic
Okay.
and yeah, just shoot the
And
shit
then
again.
depending on how much effort we want to put in, how much research we need to do.
Right,
on
like if we're not feeling doing like our time and space topic,
Yeah,
because
the
that's going to take like a
quantum
week or two
physics
to,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, research. Maybe it'll just be like a random, like we can just talk about it. Like maybe we'll do the technology
Okay. I'm done.
because we don't necessarily need
Something
to
like
research
that,
too
yeah.
much of it. We can just be like mind blown by it.
Right. Like, whoa, man.
Nah, dude. But yeah,
All
thanks
right.
for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode probably next week.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Later.
How long did we go on that one?
An hour
I
35.
was going to say, that felt like a long one.
And